Thank you for another day. Thank you for your continued guidance and believing that you restored our corners. Lord, you have step by step manner we can see your guidance and your patience, patient leading through your leaders. Lord, we pray that you may have mercy on us as we tell to be slow to adapt to the new messages sometimes. Be with us during this camp meeting. Let your will be done. In Jesus' name I pray. Good morning once again. So, during my first class, which was on Monday, during my first class on Monday, we never our primary focus was to ensure that 2014 is the primary meeting for the Sunday law, the fulfillment of the Sunday law, which we put on July. Now we understood that the world has greatly changed, and we will say that the world has drifted, especially if you look at the United States, from being a Christian nation to being an atheistic nation. Right? So it is based on this, which was the leading by NHS. Then we started to review of what the Sunday law fulfillment looks like. And we realized that the Christian world is not going to play a very big role in the fulfillment of the Sunday law, but we need to focus on something else. But of course, we know still the Christian world is part of that conglomerate that it leads to the fulfillment of the Sunday law. Now, we started looking at the year 2014, and we identified some of the key events that happened in 2014. So some of those events included the purging of the Republican Party. We have Barwell versus Lobby. What else? Yes. Gate. The last one? Yes. Blocking of yes. Supreme Court. Appointment. So we also marked a few individuals who are key in this progression we are going to look at. So what are those figures? Steve Bannon. Yeah. Jeff Sessions. Yeah. It's Steve. So Steve Miller. I thought it's a short form of Steve. It's PL, right? What's the spelling of Stephen? Sure, Stephen Miller, right? So we identify these figures because they played a key role in the reformation that is happening, or that just concluded happening in July 18, the reformation within the Republican Party. So I want us to look at something small before we embark back to this journey. So when we come to the Sunday law, we usually connect it with the image of the beast, right? Now, something else that's connected to the image of the beast is the mark of the beast. And therefore, when you come to the Sunday law, in our last class, I said that based on the revelations we got from Elder Tess, by understanding that the test for our time is equality and not Sunday Sabbath, that gave us an idea of what to expect in this fulfillment of the Sunday law. We know that whichever the event we would want to look at, we would want an event that upholds patriarchy, an event where patriarchy is the center of the messaging that is done. And so what we mark here is we would mark here sexism. So when Elder Terry began their study, they would go to a symbol, QFMG, to point to July 18, right? So primarily that is the symbol that led Elder Terry to look at July 18. But later she realizes, which I agree with her, that actually QFMG is not the primary witness for this waymark. The primary witness for this waymark is the event itself. Like, based on the fact that we were already informed on what to expect, what the world looks like, we were supposed to look at that event and be able to identify that this is the thing. But of course, God has ways of simplifying things for us. We had the symbol QFMG that's leading us. So we were supposed to look at that event and be able to categorically identify that this is the Sunday law event or date that we are looking at. And that is based on, these events that were happening before, which we call agitation. So we know that from 2021 to 2024, that we marked as agitation. Agitation of the Sunday law, right? So we marked our two waymarks there. The first waymark to be, the increase of knowledge here was June 24, 2022, right? Then there's a formalization at May 30th. And actually, at this formalization, besides the fact that we have an external event, what else is happening internally? Here. Yes? Titus? Yes, and the theory study, the repeat of the study they had done earlier on March, April. So here we have a repeat, and we have QFMG. Usually we associate the formalization waymark with. What do we associate the formalization waymark with? Yes? What? Yes, Exeter. Okay, so we have the Boston, Concord, Exeter, then we usually give characteristics to these waymarks. And I would say usually in the Exeter waymarks, we have a time setting or a prediction. Is that correct? So here we had a prediction of what the Sunday law will be before it came, and we saw it being fulfilled. Okay, so we realized that we were being pointed to an America that is atheistic and rather not Christian from the studies of the previous first classes here. And therefore, at least we had a hint. So it was not supposed to meet us with surprise when we are being directed to July 18. Because when you look at July 18, primarily in the back of your mind, you need to see issues of patriarchy, sexism, misogyny being displayed in that event. So talking of that, I want us to go to another story so that we can have a clearer understanding of what really the Sunday law waymark should look like. So like I said, we usually connect the Sunday law with the image of the beast and the mark of the beast. And then I want to begin by saying that in that event, what Satan or the Sunday law movement aims at achieving is bringing into remembrance on these issues that we are trying to move away from. So the Sunday law movement is objective about what they want, to accomplish. And in that process of them wanting to accomplish their mission, they begin by resurfacing something that is the issue at controversy. And here at the Sunday law waymark, as we are going to see from these events, this movement was very categorically deliberate to bring on board their message and to make sure that their message is heard all over the world. As we can now see, they are in that mission. So when we go, if, for example, we would quickly go to vow number 13. Vow number 13 talks about, yes? Mark of the beast, right? So we have the subject of the mark of the beast in vow number 12. Let me quickly rush there. Vow number 13, sorry. And I want us to, because this is not a study on the vow itself, I want us to just highlight 2 points. Point number 1 and point number 4. Point number 1 reads, do you believe that the seventh day of the week is God's holy sacred Sabbath day, a day of rest from all secular pursuits, a day of special worship of God? Then I'll jump to bullet point number 4, which says, do you recognize that the Sabbath as a memorial of creation represents the seal of God, and that Sunday worship is the pagan counterfeit described by the Bible as the mark of the beast? So what you realize from that vow is that there's a compare and contrast being made between the Sabbath day and Sunday worship. So there's a Sabbath, and there is Sunday, right? And then it goes ahead to describe the Sabbath as being memorial for creation, right? So the Sabbath is the 7th, and the Sunday is 1st. And then it will describe the Sabbath day as memorial. So if you see the description of the word memorial, brings on to picture has this connotation of remembrance, right? So something that brings that keeps that remembrance alive. Sindio? We usually have memorial. We actually had a memorial of the late President Kibaki. When was that? It was somewhere in last week. So when people are celebrating memorials, what they are trying to remember is the life of this individual. So if the Sabbath, therefore, is a remembrance, then we need to ask ourselves, it is a remembrance of what? Right? So, and therefore, comparing and contrasting, Sunday will as well be a memorial. And it would target to achieve remembering something as well. So when we come to this waymark, we are saying that the Sunday Law movement is categorical about what they want to bring as a remembrance, as a memorial. So when we go to Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, we see the creation account, right? So you can read for yourselves, but in those two verses, there's the aspect of plurality that is there. And that aspect of plurality that is there is that two individuals are to be created and not one. Sindio? And those two individuals are identified as male and female. Can we see that in the wording of those two verses? So there is male and female created, and then they are given what? Dominion, right? So both male and female are created, and then they are given dominion. Dominion over what? Over earth, right? So who was given dominion over earth? Yes? Who was given dominion? Man? Somebody saying man, some. So let's read the verses. I read, and God said, let us make man in our image. Actually, let me use my Concordance Bible. So when you read your Concordance Bible, so that you can have a clue of what those words are in their primary intention, the God there is plural, right? Because actually, if you continue reading, it says, let us, right? So the God is plural, and then you can see some articles that are being used to refer to the people who are being created as being plural, right? So it says, and God said, let us make man. So that man means humankind. Sure. I'm actually using my concordance. So let us make humankind in our image and after our likeness, and let them have dominion. So I think from the wording, the grammar itself, we can easily see that the dominion over the whole earth was given to both male and female, right? And then, so the whole earth is being enlarged as over the fish, over the sea, and over the fall of the air, and over the cattle, over the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man, humankind, in their own image, in the image of God, created he, him, male and female. Can we see that description? So we have male and female being given dominion over the whole earth. So we've all seen we've been given dominion over the whole earth. And therefore, we can deduce that they were equal, right? So male and female they are equal, right? So if you quickly go to chapter 2 of the same book, Genesis, we see the Sabbath instituted, right? So creation has been finished first, they've been given equality, they are both equal, and then the Sabbath is created. Chapter 2, if you read from verse 1 to 5, you will see the Sabbath. Because God was to rest on the Sabbath day, and it goes on to indicate that it was blessed. So the Sabbath was blessed. Are we together? Then let's go to chapter 3. What is chapter 3 about? Yes? So chapter 3, Genesis 3, it's about the fall of humanity. And so we have the fall. We know that account, how that story unfolds. And then what happens after the fall? A curse is introduced to humanity. What do we understand that curse to mean, by the way? Yes? What this curse that is introduced, what do we understand it to mean? Yes? Is this God telling Adam and Eve, now that you people have done ABCD, I will have to punish you? Is that what the curse means? So what does it mean, Etabo? So I think that's enough. I would agree with the Tabo that the curse is a prophetic statement. Are we together? So what is prophecy? In simple terms, just simply. Yes? Yes. So future event. So God will go ahead to give an idea to Adam and Eve what their future would look like. Actually, it was a favor God did them, because then after that pronunciation, they would know what their consequences were. So we usually say that actions have consequences. So God was revealing to them beforehand what their consequences will be after the fall, after them misbehaving or disobeying. So we have that curse, being pronounced, and we say the curse is just a prophecy or just a revelation of what the consequences will look like after that fall. So we know for sure that the curse did not play out equally, did it? Or the consequences. So, and that is where we see the problem. We've been both cast, really not cast as it sounds, like we've both have to face the consequences. But then we realize these consequences are not as equal. One is somewhat enduring more of those consequences than another. And so how did that look like? They lost dominion. So we would say they lost dominion, but unequally, right? They lost dominion over the earth, because now they would not be in a position to control the environment anymore. Because actually, we see afterwards, even the environment changed. So, but then something else that happens that I'm calling unequal is that Eve lost the dominion over herself or over Adam. So I would say Eve lost the equality dominion. But so what happens after this is that now man is over. Yes, man is over. Male is over the female. Can you explain? So if we can go to the language of the verse itself. So when we say, there's a question. Verse 16. Yeah. So verse 16 says, unto the woman he said, I'll greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception in sorrow. Thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and they shall rule over thee. That's the change in dominionship we are talking about. So now you realize that the man is ruling over the woman. But initially, they were equal, right? So we see that discrepancy in what they lost. One loses more than another. Besides both losing dominion over, lost dominion over the earth, because they would no longer be in control of the environment, right? So besides both of them losing dominion over the earth, one goes to, ahead to lose more on the aspect of the equality that they have. So you see that there's change of dynamics in the social relationship they had as human beings. Now man rules over woman. So we've described that curse as a prophecy. And then if we proceed, so what this curse looks like is a loss of dominion. And if you would focus on this aspect of equality between the two genders, we see that the curse is about this change in relationship. And now we have a man being over the woman. So if that is the curse, what was the blessing? The blessing was equality or dominion, right? So when we go to, if we go to Exodus 20 from verse 8, we know that the 10 commandments are handed over to Moses, right? So what does the fourth commandment say? Yes? It's about Sabbath, right? So we can read it quickly. From verse 8. So it says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Are we together? Are we following? 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. in it, thou shalt not do any work, thou nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. When you read that verse with this preliminary information of what we are talking about, you will realize that it's fully loaded equality in it. That verse 10. So thou is referring to all people. It's inclusive language that is in that verse, right? You see that? So that commandment is addressing all people equally. And then it goes on to I would say to reinstate equality to other people that were considered as servants in that time. And you can see it goes on to mention that even the servants were not supposed to work on that Sabbath day, right? So, and therefore what we are saying is, when you look at the Sabbath as a commandment, God is trying to lift the curse. So there's a lifting of the curse. Do we see that? Yes? Because we know, we've seen earlier on what the curse meant. The curse, placed humanity in this situation, state of inequality, right? They lost their dominion, which we say is equivalent to equality. So, and then they are given, they are reminded here on the Sabbath day about what? About the equality that they had before. Are we together? Because when you read that verse, like we've seen, it includes all people that were considered on a lower rank. The search and the description or the instruction is that these people are not supposed to work equally on the Sabbath day. And also by the article thou, which is inclusive in nature, both male and female were supposed to, not work on the Sabbath day. And therefore, what we see is that on the Sabbath day, what God is really doing is telling us to remember about equality. And this actually reminds me of what we've been saying since we established equality as the test of our time. We've been saying that on the Sabbath day, we redefine how the Sabbath looks like, right? Because on the Sabbath day, what is required of us is to embrace the equality. We would demonstrate that by, of course, we've now been able to well adapt to that both women and men are supposed to teach, right? Both women and men are supposed to do duties, leadership duties, on the Sabbath and all that. So we are being reminded here that the Sabbath was to be a memorial of equality. And if we then come back to this question of what this memorial is about on the Sabbath, remember we are trying to understand the Sunday. What it's a memorial of, what it is a remembrance of, and by comparing and contrasting, we already can see that the Sabbath day is a memorial of the dominion that they had before the curse. Because what did the curse do? The curse brought about inequality. Are we together? It deprived the woman of the dominion they had. The dominion they had on equality. So, any question up to that point?
So, Vivian, That's the question.
Yes, yes.
Since from the fall happens maybe, does it mean that maybe the projection, it has been increasing as time goes by?
What?
The projection from the time in Eden when the curse was pronounced. So it has been rising. Maybe as when we see, look at the increase of knowledge, that graph I have, has it been increasing with the space of time?
The curse.
Yeah.
Yes, I would say so. Because we usually say we have two primary ways in which we understand sexism, right? We usually say sexism is the oldest, deepest, most ingrained, yes, form of discrimination. So we can say, actually, I usually hear us say that Adam and Eve never practiced patriarchy, right? But we see that over time, it's been increasing in nature. So we would say, yeah, I think it's been increasing in nature, that curse. It's been increasing in nature over time.
But it was intercepted at Sinai.
Yeah, by introduction of the Sabbath, we were supposed to remember about the dominion that we had initially. You know, the equality that we had initially. Are we together? Maybe I don't quite well understand what your concern is or question is.
Because it was intercepted with the memorial of the Sabbath, I thought now it could decrease, the magnitude could decrease from that point.
Okay, so we will take that to UN. So I know Snyder has already written that question down. We will take that to the Q&A. So you can pardon the question to Snyder so that they can have it out. Oh, okay, sure. Who can help us in writing the questions?
I speak the honor from you, right?
So if you have a question, kindly write it, then we will answer the few of them. So we are saying that if on the Sabbath day, by comparing and contrasting, we are bringing remembrance of the equality or the dominion, then we can confidently say what this other movement intends to achieve by instigating the Sunday law or the counterfeit worship. Then their main agenda in that worship is to bring what? Remembrance of the curse. And that curse is sexism or misogyny or manosphere. Are we? Did we follow how we've derived that? Right? So this brings me back to this remark. We have the image of the beast, we have the mark of the beast, and for this process to be successful, this process here on the right side, then you must have a vessel to drive that, right? You must have a body, a movement that embodies this remembrance. A movement that if you would look at, you would easily remember sexism, misogyny, and they can actually perpetuate it to other people, and therefore bringing that remembrance of sexism or misogyny. That is why, so how I'm connecting this to that is that it needs to be clear to us here that we have a movement which we call the Sunday Law movement that is very particular about what they want to achieve. And we've seen what they want to achieve is bringing the remembrance or memorial of the cars, unlike the Sabbath law movement, if I will call as that, or the movement, unlike the movement, which wants to bring a remembrance of the dominion or equality that was back here in Eden. So we can bring that on that waymark. So sure. So now for us to understand how this comes to this process comes to be a success, we need to track it back to 2014. That is where it explicitly begins. So when you go to 2014, I've marked here 2008 and 2012. What significant thing happened in 2008? Yes, Titus? Yes, there was that financial crisis. What significant event happened in 2012? Etabo? Yes. But I think the Tea Party, the rise of the Tea Party would as well place it in 2008, right? Yes. So there's the rise of the Tea Party here. I mark here Obama 2012. The reason why I'm bringing those two prior events is because what happens in 2014 is actually propelled by the previous events that were already happening. You have in 2008 that financial crisis. Then, following the election of Obama, then when you come to 2014, you have this section of the Republican Party who are infuriated about what has just happened. They realize that they are now losing that grip of the United States and them, informing what the United States looks like. And we've marked them by these three leaders who would lead a movement that is now angry after, the financial crisis, because you understand after this financial crisis, they would bring up conspiracy theories to explain how that financial crisis came to happen. Also Obama was a Democrat. So you have these people who are infuriated and who are now embarking on a deliberate mission to make sure that they snatch that governance from the Democratic Party, and they must come up with strategies of doing that. So you have Steve Bannon. I would say somewhat Steve Bannon and Jeff Sessions. Steve Bannon and Steve Miller. They had some difference on how they thought they would change United States. Steve Bannon believes that he wanted to change the world actually, right? So, and the way Steve Bannon wants to change that world is by having, a president who would lead in that. So that will be top-down strategy. And then Steve Miller would prefer a bottom-up strategy in order, to change that administration. So Stephen Miller would go ahead and initiate campaigns of drifting their base towards the right, and that is when you would start looking at things like Gamergate. What is Gamergate, by the way? In the last camp meeting, Rogers talked about Gamergate and we defined it. What's Gamergate?
Industry.
Yes, video game industry. I think it was a hashtag in a video game industry, right? So hashtag Gamagate. And it was targeting what? That hashtag. Women. So women within the video game industry, right? So they felt this threat of women overtaking that industry, and they felt that this is a man's world, and we have to initiate a campaign that is making sure that as much as possible, we tarnish the picture of women within this video game industry. That is why we should discourage our kids, for those who are parenting, from these video games. Actually, that is the primary reason as to why, as a movement, we would discourage video games. It is because within those video games, there's a deliberate, how do we call that thing in social media, that it's called algorithm. There's a deliberate algorithm that I think it's impossible now to change that. It's built into that system. That algorithm will obviously depict women as in a certain way and depict men as a certain way in those video games. So we see such a strategy is so successful in moving the base towards, imprinting this ideology of sexism and keeping that remembrance within these people who play games within them about sexism. It was a very successful strategy that really works miracles. So then you come to 2014, we see these people initiate a deliberate mission towards achieving something. So we are saying people are already angry about 2008 financial crisis. So when these people are trying to achieve their objective, they find a ground that is receptive, a ground that is already it has already been informed by previous events. So what they needed to do is to just change some facts here and there, fabricate some conspiracy theories, and they could easily move masses, as we can see. So when we come to 2014, we have what we would call the establishment versus, what term would you use to refer to these people? So against these people was the establishment. So the establishment are people who have been in the Republican Party and they have been upholding the Constitution, right? So you would have the establishment, and when they see here Obama winning in 2012, they actually are able to mark out what gave Obama victory. And they can easily see it is because Obama embraced immigrants. So what this establishment within the Republican Party would want to achieve, or they suggested that we need to embrace what? Immigrants. And they would push for a bipartisan bill within Congress. That bipartisan bill was called, I don't remember the name of the bipartisan bill, but it was a bill that was to lessen on the immigration and citizenship of these people. But Stephen Miller and the team would work towards striking down that bipartisan bill. So it was never realized. So it is from this point you see, they actually had to purge the Republican Party of the moderates. These people I call the establishment, they are moderates. Of the moderates. Are we following? So for them to come to make a Republican Party, which will help them in pushing the agenda, they had to purge such people who would come up with a bipartisan bill that is meant to embrace immigrants into the United States. But it never succeeded because this team, came up with a campaign within the House of Representatives, and it never actually succeeded, that thing. So that's one of the events that we mark there to show that deliberate action of this team here in 2014. And then we know that they actually worked to achieve many things. We remember the wall, the southern border wall. You know that action was actually passed in the House and consequently signed during the presidency of Trump here in 2016. So we have 2016 to 2020. So within this timeline, these people and their team, they realized many things that really changed the United States, including that the wall that they were building that was struck down by Biden during the presidency, Biden's reign. So so the reason why we bring on board Stephen Miller is we realized that during Trump's presidency, the first day of Donald it's fine. So it's fine, right? So when you come to 2021, we mark January 6th. So before Eldatex left, they actually highlighted January 6th because Eldatex would look at January 6th and they could easily see that that was a significant event that was happening there within, it was a turning point in the United States. So January 6th is part of this campaign that was to see Donald Trump being reinstated into the office. So So January 6, 2021 comes against the backdrop of what had happened in 2020. So what had happened in 2020? Election. So we are from an election, and Donald Trump has legitimately lost an election. So there's an election here. And then they would initiate a campaign that the election was stolen, right? And that campaign actually attracted most people who believed those conspiracy theories, right? So when you come to 2021, they would start a campaign called, there's this thing called precinct strategy. Actually, we should also mark it here in 2014. There's the issue of precinct strategy. So in the United States, there are many offices that are elected and maybe we don't usually focus on. These offices are usually elected at the lowest level, right? So these positions especially play a big role in even in informing how that party works. So precinct strategy is an agenda that was initiated by somebody called Dan Charles. Dan Charles. Dan Charles. So Dan Charles is a law and a local party official. So back in 2014, Dan Charles initiated this campaign where they would initiate a campaign of informing people that they should occupy these positions that take a very big role in informing what the party goes with as their candidate. So it was a very good strategy that would see them, this group and their cronies or their team, that would see them take over the Republican Party. So actually, we are in January 6, somewhere before January 20th. Donald Trump endorsed this strategy. Endorsed that strategy. So it influences which candidate appears in the ballot from the from whichever party. So those positions, these are the people who usually sit at election boards to certify the results at the lowest levels in the state. Are we together? So at the lowest levels in the state, the people who sit in that board to certify elections, they could be, so people are being educated on how they should utilize these positions that have in the past not been utilized, to make sure that they inform which candidate and how that party works. Precinct. Precinct strategy. So even Steve Bannon promoted this precinct strategy in their podcasts. And we know how these podcasts also played a very big role in 30 minutes. So when you come to July 18, what you are seeing, if because of time, when you come to July 18, what you are seeing, it is culmination of a deliberate campaign that has been going on. 15, thank you. So when you come to July 18, what you see is the culmination of a deliberate strategy that has been going on from 2014, which was more fuel from 2021. And we are saying that from 2021, it becomes more fuel because of these false campaigns about stolen election that was happening from 2020. So these people become, that machinery becomes more oil to work towards July 18. And these are the individuals that worked tirelessly to make sure that they, in each of these people, whenever they would go to podcasts from 2021, they doubled down on two things: Donald Trump, anti-immigration. And they would, from podcast to podcast, present their agenda or their strategies as they would, represent Donald Trump as the new leader within the Republican Party. They would also, sell the agenda of anti-immigration more boldly from 2021 going forward. So then with July 18, when we have a complete takeover of the Republican Party. So if you are certain in 1989, you are keen enough to realize that actually I need to change my vessel for messaging. And if we can extend this line all the way to 1989, here 1989, we know that that is the inception of the seventh king. So we usually say that the movement is back in 1989, but the change of leadership, the complete change of leadership happens at the Sunday Law, right? That is when we have the movement taking over as the only entity that can give out the right message here, the Sunday Law. So also the same thing, we can see the seventh kingdom from 1989, if you want to see it, right? You want to see it. But we know that the complete establishment of that machinery, that it can now, it has formalized its message that it's giving to the world, happens at the Sunday Law. So we have the seventh kingdom here, but this seventh kingdom will go ahead to make the image of the beast, which is the best form of that seventh kingdom to do the messaging, the image of the beast here. So here we have the vessel plus the message. The message they want to take to the world is sexism, misogyny. We could see that, yes? Homophobia, sure. So we could see that very clearly in that event. It was full in display. They would come out clearly to say, now it is a man's world. Others would say that feminism is a failed movement now. We are the people, we have now dominated over feminism. They didn't mince their words. They were clear that they had overtaken the feminist movement. So we can now see from 2024, if this is the COP, this is the Sunday law, we can now see what they are doing is now they are agitating the world. So this was, we see that this was the agitation, the Sunday law, but now it is the agitation of the world, because from LDT studies, we've been able to see that there is a national Sunday law and a universal, a worldwide Sunday law. So what they are doing now, they have a vessel and a message that they are going to use to bring into the basket the whole world. And when we come to the worldwide Sunday law, we begin the test for the world, because it's either they are going to accept this message that's being propagated from the Republican Party, the message of Manosphere and the MAGA, if they are going to accept that message. So I don't know if we have any other question. Oh, sorry. Image of the beast, sorry. Another one? Another mistake? Okay, you have a question?
Now, my first question, when we get to the national standing law, maybe how more of a vessel, right? We expect to see the people who have formed this vessel at the universal standing law, or be open to take another perspective where you be having different people still championing the same idea. That is one.
So I think we can write that question down. Please write it for me well. Make sure it's well written. Make sure it's well written. Don't mince words. Any other question? Please make sure you write it down.
Question 2.
Yes.
Previously, we did develop a principle that we would use to perfectly identify a waymark that's called the standing law. We went back into history, did meditate history, and the standing law in the standing law in
1850
history. That one is so cool. One basic principle, the most primitive principle that we always carried along was the bit that for us to see a Sunday law, there must be the aspect of infringing on the basic human rights, or call it so. So we have more of a, I don't know whether we have more of a tangible bit by July 1854 that we say that now we are having an infringement on basic human rights.
Please don't forget words. Write it down because you will forget. Will you? Because these questions need to be answered. What will we do? They write for themselves.
No.
Oh, he's the one writing the rest of the questions. So write the questions and forward them to Snyder. Yes, son. Clarification. Oh, yeah, I brought here Steve Bannon because he also campaigned for this pressing strategy. They were trying to educate the public that they need to take role in selecting these leaders at the lowest position, leaders who would help them to move the Republican from establishment, to snatch the Republican Party from the establishment and bring it to this movement that wants a vessel to propagate their messaging. So when you come to July 18, that Republican does no longer belongs to the likes of, you would mention them. We have people like Mike Pence, we like name them. Yes? Yeah, there are these Republicans who are called who don't agree with Trump, right? So what this pressing strategy was for, it was a democratic strategy and a well-accepted democratic strategy that would help them to snatch the Republican Party from this establishment who are slowing down their process of, realizing their objectives. So we see them successfully doing here, and that is why we say that at this waymark, it marked the complete takeover of the Republican Party. And now the MAGA would go ahead to use it as their vessel of bringing on board the whole world.
Do I look at it as maybe as a civil war within the party?
Yes, within the party, that was literally a civil war within the party from 2014 going forward.
And we also said that the executive orders of Trump, they had a brain time of those two things.
Sure, yes. And there's this other organization, how do we call it, Jackie? Behind, yes, Heritage Foundation. Yeah, so there's the Heritage Foundation broadly, then these figures are key players in that, because we know the Heritage Foundation, this is the organization that came up with Project 2025. And we will say most of those policies, executive policies, they were extracted from Project 25 document. So it's all connected. So if you have a question, we will answer it in the Q&A. Let's pray. We are praying. Dear Lord, help us to make sense of the events. Help us to realize that these events are calling us to see that we are living in solemn times where we need to reorganize ourselves and stand strong for what is happening and what is before us, so that we cannot digress from the journey. Be with us throughout this camp meeting, be with each and every member, fulfill their righteous intent, motives that they want to achieve from this camp meeting. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.